I appreciate the opportunity to come back and talk about this topic again. It's obviously still very popular. And so I'm hopefully going to be able to share a lot of good information. And as you said, we'll take some questions about cutting the cord and maybe some other home tech questions along the way. I do have some things to share. I've got some slides. I promise not to use too much time with slides, but it's always a good way to illustrate some of the things we're going to be talking about here. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to get right to it, and I apologize. I was probably on my last slide of this presentation, so I'm going to get right to the beginning of it again, and we'll start right in with the presentation. Okay. All right, so we are going to first talk about just what the title of the presentation is, Cutting the Cable Cord. Now you can watch your favorite TV shows and hopefully save a lot of money along the way. So for those of you who like charts, I did include just a couple of quick charts. This one is actually a little bit out of date, but I couldn't find anything more up to date than this. This is comparing two things: the cost of cable TV, this traditional cable, and inflation. Now, this really covers 20 years from 1995 to 2015. And what you can see is starting at $100 in 1995. Now it costs for the same cable TV package you might have then over $300. And again, that was in 2015. I'm sure it costs a lot more than that now, whereas inflation had kind of gone to $150. So you can see that the cable companies have been really raising their rates for typical cable packages at a far greater rate than the rate of inflation. So that's one of the big motivators right now, and has been for many years, for people to cut the cord. And this is sort of the opposite direction. This is, by the way, projecting out to 2026, the number of pay TV households, and that's traditional pay households. That starts in 2013, over 100 million homes with pay cable subscriptions, shrinking to about half of that in the next few years. So again, that's the trend, is cutting that traditional cable TV cord and getting to what's called streaming, or maybe even over the air. And that's where we're going to go next, because those are the two ways that you can cut the cord. Over the air, OTA, that's just using an antenna. You can, believe it or not, you can still use an antenna to get digital TV broadcasts. The other one is called over the top. That's a term that was actually coined by the cable TV industry when they started noticing that people were using their internet that they were getting from their provider to start streaming things like Netflix, and they called that they were going over the top of the cable wall, so to speak, and they didn't like it. OTT is that was kind of a negative connotation, but really that's what it is now. That's streaming video with Netflix and other subscription services, but also there's live TV as well, and that's what we're going to be talking about. Okay, so OTA, over the air, you can still, if you're in a good location, maybe up on a hill, or maybe even not up on a hill, you can pick up a lot of the New York City and Connecticut stations with a digital antenna. And it actually works pretty well, again, depending on where you are. I've got one myself. I don't really use it that often. I do stream just about all the time, but a lot of people, if you really want to be conscious of what your monthly bill is like, your monthly budget for TV, you might think about that. So I did want to talk about that first. But what we're really going to be focusing on is the streaming TV services, the over the top, which is really just about the same experience that you're used to with traditional cable TV. You have a guide, you have live channels, you even have most of your local TV stations and the other cable networks. I've listed a few of the more popular services. We'll talk a little bit about a couple of them specifically, but the range, depending on the sort of package you get, could be anywhere from $25 to maybe $80 a month to get a package of live channels. And you can actually spend more than that if you want to have some add-ons, but we're going to talk about sort of these basic packages and compare them. Okay. So how does this work? Well, if you're going to stream anything, you need to have either what they call a streaming appliance, or you need to have a smart TV in every room that you want to watch your TV. So first is the streaming appliances. And there's more than just these here. There's a Google Chromecast, but these are the most popular streaming appliances: Apple TV, Roku, and Fire TV, which is Amazon's device. And again, there's Google Chromecast and a couple of others, but these are the most popular mainstream ones that most people will end up using. And of course, there are lots and lots of TVs now that have this same capability built in, and you don't need the appliance. That's why they call it a smart TV. It'll bring up the apps and the services and all the capabilities of a streaming appliance built right into the TV. That's also a very, very popular option as well. This is a good opportunity to say it is interactive. I don't want to make this one way, and I know that you're going to have a lot of questions, and I'm going to get through these slides quickly, and we're going to probably get into some more interactivity as well. Okay, here's the big, most important thing about this. You don't need a cable box anymore. And that probably is the most important part of this, because it's not just paying for the cable box. Those packages we talked about at the very beginning are very expensive now to get, all of the local channels, cable networks that you like to watch. It's a very, very expensive proposition these days. Okay, so I'm gonna pick on Hulu right now and talk about it a little bit. I've got a little video demonstration. It's really just the guide so that you can see that the experience is just like watching a traditional cable box. Now, I do see that there is a question in the Q&A. So, and I see you've raised your hand. So I'm going to stop, Elaine, and you can go ahead and ask the question.
Yes, the question is, how can I tell if I have a smart TV?
That's a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
So most smart TVs started to come out about 10 years ago, or even more. The way that you can tell is when you take the remote control for your TV, and I don't know which TV you're talking about. I'll mention a few brand names: Samsung and Sony. Those are kind of the more popular ones, as well as Vizio. Vizio is a very, very popular model because it's a very economic one. It doesn't cost a lot of money, but there's usually a button on it that'll say home or menu. Or sometimes it has a little picture of like a colorful button, like a cube, as you'll see on a Samsung, and that'll bring up a menu that shows you apps. If you see that there's apps on your TV, then it's a smart TV. That's the quickest way that I could explain how to tell if you've got a smart TV. And then the other point I'll make is that you need to then connect it to your home Wi-Fi, your internet, in order to be able to function like that. So I hope that answered the question. Is there a second one? I see
There is another one on smart TVs. Is there any reason to get one versus just getting Roku?
Another very good question. So the newer smart TVs are very capable, and they are able to be updated. The software can update so that you don't get an obsolete set of apps. So the original smart TVs didn't do that very well. Every once in a while I'll come across one with a customer who's got a smart TV from 10 or 15 years ago, and it's just incapable of doing anything. But the newer smart TVs are very well equipped to handle just about all of the streaming apps that you'd ever want to get. Now, I'm going to take a little side detour here, and I'm going to talk about the appliances. Why are they different? Why are they better? They do offer usually a better interface, and what I mean by that is how you interact with it. They have usually a much broader range of streaming apps. They're also usually quicker, and what I mean by that is they respond very, very quickly. Especially, I'll say Apple TV. I'm going to single that out. Apple TV is probably the best one. Therefore, it is the priciest one. That's what happens. You get what you pay for. But Roku and the Fire Stick or the Fire, and here's one, by the way, I just happen to have. This is an Amazon Fire Stick. You can see it's very small. This plugs into the back of your TV with a little video, HDMI cable, and even the Apple and Roku devices are not too much bigger than this. They're very, very small devices, and they all usually run on Wi-Fi. So again, there is no right or wrong answer. Smart TV versus appliance. They're all pretty similar now if you're talking about the more recent TVs. But if you have an older smart TV or just an old HGTV, then you're probably better off getting one of the streaming appliances. You'll be much happier that way because they're, you can get a Fire Stick for, I don't know, $30 or $40 or maybe even less, and you don't have to go buy a new TV. So that's why these are popular, because they instantly make any TV a smart TV when you buy one of these. Okay, are there any other questions right now, Elaine?
There is a question about, someone has investigated various streaming services, and they find that the local news they seem to default to is the New York stations. How can I get access to local news from Hartford?
Good question. You know what I'm going to do? Because it came up now, I'm going to stop sharing this. I've got another website ready to go. And if you've already got a smart TV, I don't know if the person asking that question has already got one. There is a service called News On. And this is important because it's not just a website on the computer. It is it's an app that most smart TVs and the streaming appliances, you can go and search in the little app store on each of these devices and download it. I've got it on my TV, for example. And right now, this is the web page on my browser, but you can see it's showing me every news channel in like 150-mile radius. And you can select any one of them. You can watch replays of the local news, or you can watch it when it's on live. So again, it's called News On, and it's excellent. It's free, doesn't cost anything. So those of you who want to watch a Hartford news station as opposed to a New York City news station, then this is the app for you, and you'll be very, very happy with it. Okay. Another question, Elaine?
It is. It's going back to the devices.
Okay.
If you get that device, and I'm not sure which device in particular, but if we get that device, is there a monthly charge for access?
Oh, okay. Good question. We're going to talk about paying for services in a minute, and that's where I was going to get to next. But each one of these devices, Apple TV, Roku, Fire, it's a piece of hardware. You buy it once. There's no monthly fee like you pay to the cable company to own a box. Once you buy this, you own it. And that's part of the beauty of this model is you're only going to pay for the services that you are going to be viewing. You're not going to pay for hardware. Okay. All right. That's a good question. So let's do this. I'm going to go back to where I was. So what we're going to see here is just a 20-second video of the Hulu live guide interface. And what you're going to see right away is it looks a lot like a normal, or I should say a traditional cable TV box guide. You scroll down, it's got the time of day at the top and your selection of available channels. And of course, the channels depend on what packages you paid for. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes as well. But again, this is a very traditional interface. It's something we're all used to. And that's what makes it a lot easier to transition to this because you're going to have that same experience. Okay. All right. Now I can advance on here. All right. Okay. I've got a chart here, and really it's not the chart I wanted to go to next. I probably had these out of order, but let's talk about this briefly. Let's back up. Before there was the live TV we're going to talk about, there was Netflix. Netflix was the first big subscription service that you would pay for monthly and watch movies and later TV shows and lots of other content. And now today there's an explosion. There's so many subscription services. And this chart is just a few of them. These prices are from January and they seem to change every day. I don't want to get too far in the weeds. I think most people are familiar with these subscriptions. So it's the Netflix model. You pay a monthly fee and you on demand stream content. Now, some of them actually have live content now. Paramount, for example, has live content. It's tied to CBS. And Peacock, which is owned by Comcast, which is NBC, They have a lot of live content on Peacock, including a lot of sports. But for the most part, people purchase these services we're looking at now for movies, original TV series, and some traditional, older movies that people like to watch. So these are add-ons. And what I mean by that is if you're going to cut the cable because you want to watch live TV, everything we're looking at this screen is kind of optional. But to some people, it's a must-have because there's a series on Apple TV Plus that you just got to watch, or a series on Netflix that you just got to watch. So these don't look like a lot of money, but I'll say this right now. These add up. It's $6 a month. That's nothing. $7, that's nothing. All of a sudden, you've got 10 of these add-on services plus your live TV service, and now you're paying a lot of money. But again, that's everybody's choice. Even if you didn't switch off the traditional cable box, all of these services you'd still have to pay extra for, unless Optimum or maybe Comcast, Xfinity, depending on where you live. Sometimes they'll include them in your subscription by adding a little bit more to your package price. So, okay, we can talk about this again later. I'm going to talk about Wi-Fi, but not right now. I see, is there another question there, Elaine?
Yes, it just came in. Is it easy to cancel a service after 1 or 2 months?
Oh, that's a good question. Most of these services that we're going to talk about, the live ones, don't have a contract so that you can cancel them. They also most of them have a trial period of usually a week so that you can try it out and see if you like it. And that's important to note. But there are very few. I don't think there's any that have contracts. Now, someone's going to probably who maybe has these pipe up and tell me they do, because the prices change a lot and the packages change a lot. In fact, what I'm going to do is there is a really excellent chart. This is where I'm going to share one of my links, and it's CNET TV. So let me share my screen again. So again, I'm going to scroll to the top. So this is on CNET. I'll drop the link, and it's comparing the most popular of the live streaming services like Hulu, which we were just looking at. Now it's nice that they have the web page, but what's even better is you can see right here, there's a Google Sheet. And I'm going to also send you the link to that, and they've linked it as well. So this, I was actually doing a version of this a few years ago, and it was so hard to keep up with. Let me explain what this is. Right across the top, you've got the names and the prices of these major streaming services. And again, so this is live TV. All of these services have live TV, but they differ in some of the features, and mostly they differ in which channels they offer, okay? So again, CNET has very helpfully put the most recent pricing up there, and this pricing is subject to change. And they've also put a grid that shows you which channels or networks are included. Now, the question came up earlier about local. So we here in Reading live in the New York City market area, which means that for the most part, these services, when they do provide you local stations, they're going to be the New York City stations. So Channel 2 CBS out of New York, or Channel 4 NBC, etc. The last time I checked, YouTube was the one service that lets you select a zip code for your local stations. Again, I haven't done that in a while, but I remember doing that. Oh, that's pretty good. In other words, if you were someone who wanted to watch the Hartford stations and you signed up for the YouTube service, which is here, and that one is $73 a month, then you could select the Hartford stations. Now, don't quote me on that because they might have changed that practice. All of these services seem to change features and policies and practices on a regular basis, and it's sometimes hard to keep up with that. But having said that, most of these you're going to get, if you're going to get local stations, they're going to be out of New York City, and that's because of where we live, all right? Okay, so let's talk about this grid. And again, CNET did a great job. They saved me a lot of work because I did this for a while and it was so hard to keep up with. But it's really easy to follow. If you want to watch ABC TV, obviously you're not going to get one of these services here, Philo, which is kind of a very low priced $25 a month, but as you can see, you don't get any local channels with the service called Philo. Sling has been around a very long time, and they've got a Sling orange and a Sling blue. It's a little bit confusing. I don't normally recommend a Sling because, first of all, in no way can you get, now you can get ABC in the New York market. It says no here, but you cannot get CBS, for example. So when I am talking to my customers about replacing a traditional cable box, I'm really, really talking about these 4 services up here: the YouTube TV, Hulu Live, DirecTV Stream, and Fubo. Those are the services that give you the fully featured sort of local cable, traditional cable experience. Of course, they cost more money. As you can see, you're just going to be spending, $70 to $80. But here's the nice thing about all of these services. There's a few nice things. First of all, they all have a built-in DVR. It's a virtual DVR. It's not an actual device. It's in the cloud. And most of them have unlimited DVR, or maybe it lasts for 90 days. It's a wonderful feature because not everything is on demand, and there may be a live event. You maybe want to watch the Oscars, but you don't want to stay up until midnight. So you record it on your DVR and you can watch it the next day. And that's a great feature, having that virtual DVR. The other nice thing is if you are, away from home and you want to watch something like that, you can open up your laptop or you can put the app on your phone. All of these services allow you to watch pretty much on any device, smartphone, laptop, as well as watching at home. This is a good place to stop. And I see there's another question, Elaine, so let's go ahead and take that.
One of our participants would like to know, which one of these services do you have?
Sure. I currently use Hulu, and I'll tell you why. I actually used the DirecTV Stream for quite a few years, but that one fell out of favor for a couple of reasons. One is because of certain channels that weren't available, certain networks.
Well,
and the other reason was, what's popular in my household is not just the live TV, but the Disney Plus channel and a lot of the content there. And sometimes ESPN. We like to watch some sports on ESPN. And because they're all owned by Disney, Hulu, the Disney Plus channel, and ESPN, they bundle that and you save a lot of money. So they got very smart with their marketing on that. And so those are the primary reasons that we ended up switching over to Hulu. DirecTV is fine. YouTube TV is very, very good as well. Fubo is good. Fubo markets itself for people who like sports, especially European sports leagues. Fubo is a big specialist on that. So they're kind of a niche, but as you can see, Fubo is just as expensive as the others. Again, I'm going to drop this link in the chat before this is over so that you can get it. I should probably be doing that right now, and maybe I will. But what you'll see as you go down this, and I know there's another question, we're going to get to that in a second. It's very good because not only does it tell you whether or not you can get ESPN on one of these services, it also tells you if it's an extra charge. It put a $ sign that yes, it's available, but you're going to have to pay extra for it above and beyond the price that's up here at the top. So as you can see, it's kind of complicated. And this is where I'll spend some time with customers. When they ask me which service, the first question is, it all depends on what do you want to watch? Or do you have any networks that are a must-have? For example, if you have to have HGTV, that was, I think, one of the ones that became kind of a deal. Now it happens to be everywhere. It didn't used to be everywhere. A couple of years ago, it was not on DirecTV Stream. That's one of the reasons that we switched over, for example. And I think maybe, I know Hallmark as well was the other one. I see there's another question, so I'm going to take that question while I put this link into the chat.
All right, thank you. So this patron would like to know, says that Optimum informs them that if they cut cable only have Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi will be $100 a month. Add that to the service like Hulu, and I'm paying the same as before cutting the cord. Any suggestions?
That's a really good point. And this is obviously what comes up all the time. Because cable companies like to bundle their services so that they can keep you hanging on to their service. And that's why they do that. And you're right. I I think with tax, my optimum, and I have the lowest speed possible. We're going to talk about that in a second too. It's like $95 a month. And my bundle, the Hulu Live with Disney, and by the way, I think we have Max, which is HBO Max thrown on top of that, is like another $90 a month. So yeah, it's about $180. So I guess the question is a good one. Now, if you only have one box in your house and you're maybe getting a discount of some sort on the bundle, then it's probably a good reason to stop and consider if you really want to cut the cord. But the families and the households that have 3 or 4 cable boxes, and they have a lot, I hear people tell me they're spending $250 a month or more on their cable and their internet. And so that's a good case right there for saving money. But if you're only paying, if you've got and let's not talk about home phone at all. Most people aren't even using the home phone. It's a good product, but a lot of people are just kind of getting away from that. If we're talking about a bundle of cable TV and your internet, and it's only $150 or $180 a month for whatever packages you have, that's a pretty good price. You're probably not going to save a lot of money unless you really went with one of the pared down packages that we're looking at here. But again, that means you're going to probably give up some local channels. Now, if all you care about is local news, which one person earlier asked about, and you got that news on and you could watch your local news that way, and maybe you go down and you see, well, Sling Orange is $40 a month, and maybe this has a few of the networks that I want to watch, you might determine that even with your $90 or $100 a month for Optimum, another $40 a month for Sling. One of the Sling, by the way, you can combine Sling for $55 a month, the orange and blue. That might actually save you some money, and you'll still get to watch the TV that you want to watch. So, so that's a good question, and there is going to be a tipping point. Some households are spending a lot on their cable and internet package. If they're spending $250 a month, this is a good way to go. If you're spending well under $200 a month already, maybe you don't have to do this, and then you're probably going to stay where you are. Okay. All right, I was gonna copy this and I didn't do it. I'm gonna do it now. I'm gonna go to the chat. So this is actually a direct link to the Google Smart Sheet that we're looking at right now, from CNET, and it's excellent. If you are, again, sort of in the market and you want to start comparing, this is the best place that you could possibly start, okay? All right, there's no questions right now, so I want to talk about your home internet itself. And I don't have a slide for that. In fact, I'm just going to stop sharing for a second. And I think somebody did put a question in, and that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
The question is just though more of housekeeping. The chat says it's disabled, and yes, the chat is disabled. We ask that you put your questions in the Q&A. You should,
Okay.
however, be able to see. Oh, Dan, I do see what she's saying now. Your link just went to host and panelists.
Oh, it did. I see.
I'll send that to everybody. You go ahead.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's technology.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about your internet speed and your Wi-Fi. So people use the term Wi-Fi interchangeably, or I should say universally, to mean my internet at home. But there's really 2 different technologies to think about with your home internet and your Wi-Fi. So you've got a cable or fiber that's coming in from your provider. It could be Optimum, it could be Frontier, it could be Comcast, and that goes into a device that's usually called a modem, a cable modem, and that is what takes the signal from the street and converts it into an internet signal in your house. But that's just a wired device at that point. In the first, early days of cable modems back, 25 years ago with Roadrunner, and I used to work for Time Warner Cable, and we had Roadrunner, there was no Wi-Fi. You had to plug a computer into your modem or a router into your modem, and there was no Wi-Fi, but that's your internet. Then the Wi-Fi came later. And And you can separate those two technologies. And that's usually what I recommend for my customers, is to not use the built-in radio signal Wi-Fi that comes in the box that you pay for. My recommendation is you buy your own modem, because A, you save $10 a month or whatever they're charging now for your modem. And then you can get a separate Wi-Fi system, a more advanced Wi-Fi system than the one that's built into the cable modem, and to get much better coverage in your house. Let me stop for the question, and then we'll talk about this some more.
And I believe you may have addressed this earlier. This attendee has a friend in a 8-story building in DC who uses a antenna and streaming. Would the antenna approach work here in the Connecticut suburbs, or is that doable because DC is an urban setting with sophisticated communication capabilities?
That's a good question. So we're going to go back to over the air. So the combination of an antenna to get your local channels, and then maybe you stream one of the lower cost, cable network streamers like Sling or Philo or one of those, that could work. It depends. So for example, I have an antenna. I live here in West Reading, and there just happens to be a really big hill between me and the direct line of sight to the New York City area, which is where those antennas are. I can pick up on a good day a couple of the channels, channel 2, channel 4, maybe, and then channel 6. They're all digital, by the way. Those channels mean nothing anymore. There's no such thing as a channel, but that's how we know it. I can pick up, maybe half of the stations digitally, and when they come in, they're great. So it depends on your elevation, and if there's anything blocking your line of sight. You can also pick up channel 8 coming out of New Haven, because that's actually pretty close. That's ABC. Again, if you've got a good line of sight and you aim your antenna there, you can put an antenna in the attic if you're not too buried in a dell or a valley somewhere. I put mine on my roof because I have that big hill in the way, and I had to have it up on my roof, like a traditional old one. But the answer is, you can do what your friend in DC is doing if you can get a good signal, and it's not an easy thing to figure out. There are apps on your phone that you can use to tell you whether or not you've got a good signal to the digital transmission coming from either New York or Hartford or New Haven. But if you could, it's a really good alternative, because you don't have to pay for any of the services that give you the over-the-air networks. You just may have to pay for something less expensive, and then you could save yourself some money. So I hope that answered the question.
I think this is a follow-up question, Dan.
Yep, go
Did
ahead.
you say I should buy a modem with a built-in router?
No. So my recommendation is, and thank you for the question, is there is a law that says you don't have to pay the rental fee to any cable company's equipment for your cable internet. So in other words, you can do a one-time cost, go out and buy a modem. Even the nicest, fastest modems are, a couple $100 at the most. And that's just a modem. There's no built-in Wi-Fi. The recommendation is to buy, especially if you have a larger house. And what I mean by that is 3,000 square feet or more, to buy a mesh Wi-Fi system. There's many good ones on the market. And that helps to spread the Wi-Fi signal around your house, because that's just the radio. Think of Wi-Fi as a radio transmitter. That's all it is. You have one of the Wi-Fi units connects to that modem. That's how you get the internet signal coming from outside on the street into your system that is now going to broadcast that to your phone or your laptop or your smart TV and your streaming appliances in the house. So, and if you get a good signal from your company, it's not, you're not getting outages. You don't have any drops in signal coming from the cable on the street. If you have a solid 100 megabit per second, and that's like this, and by the way, Optimum is now up to like 200 megabits for that $100 a month. That is 10 times more speed than you need for streaming anything. People say, oh, I need the 500 megabit, I need the 1 gigabit. You probably don't need that unless you've got, 10 kids and they're all playing, real-time role-playing games like, Halo, et cetera, with their friends online. You don't need a gigabyte unless you've got a server or something like that. So again, the recommendation is you buy a modem and you buy your own separate Wi-Fi router or Wi-Fi mesh system, and you don't have to pay any rental fee. It's a one-time charge, and you've got the best coverage of internet that you can in your house. Okay. All right. I know there's another question up there.
There are 2 more questions. Can you recommend a router brand?
Oh, I don't like to, because there's several good ones on the market. And they I'll say this. There was one brand for a while, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was installing a lot, particular mesh brand, and then I fell out of love with it, and it fell out of my favor because they just didn't do a good job with the software, and I switched over to a different one. Um, I I would talk about that if somebody wanted to send an email to my website at starsridge.com. You can get in touch with me there, and maybe we can have a conversation. And the reason I'm saying this is there's different houses with different, you know, sort of architecture and topology and different, and some systems work better in one house than they work in another house and vice versa. So I don't like to say this is the one to get, because it all depends on your home and your needs and how many people and what kind of, you know, wireless connectivity you need depending on the applications that you're using. Okay, so that's, I hope that's helpful, but you know,
There's a
I'm
follow-up.
happy to, I'm happy to get on a call with folks, you know, for a few minutes. I don't charge extra just to spend 5 minutes talking to somebody on the phone and to talk about their situation and maybe some recommendations based on at least spending some time talking to an individual. Okay.
Okay. And one other question is the cable company remote is more sophisticated compared to the Roku remote. If you purchase the more expensive remote from Roku, will it mirror the cable company remote?
Well, that's an interesting question. And when you say more, I guess that the term, was it more sophisticated? Was that the
Yes.
term?
Mhm.
Okay. I think what that means is it has lots of buttons, right? That's maybe, and I don't know if that's what they mean by that, but I guess, so here's a Roku remote, and this is actually one of the older ones, you know. And we have an Apple TV in the family room, which I really like a lot. They're very, as you can see, they don't have a lot of buttons. The Apple TV has even fewer on it. And there's two reasons why. Because all of the controls you need are up on the screen, and you just need to have a wheel or arrows to go back and forth and select what you want. And the other reason is most of the new remotes, and I know the cable remotes have this too, you can talk to them. So with Apple TV, you use Siri, and you can just press a button on the side and say, tune to, you know, or start watching this movie, and boom, it watches the movie. You don't even have to press a button. You just have to talk to the remote. And so that's important to understand, is remote controls are much more streamlined now. They don't have a lot of buttons because all of the functionalities in the TV or in the appliance, and you just need the remote to wake the TV up, to tell it to do, if you think, to make the volume go up and down, and that's about it. And you won't, and because you're cutting the cord and you don't need the cable box, you don't need that. You don't need all the buttons. You don't need all the 1 through 9 and 0 and buttons. You don't need any of that. There's no channel numbers, by the way. When you get Hulu Live or YouTube, there's no channel numbers on the side. It's just, it'll say ABC or it'll say HBO or whatever the network is that you're watching. And again, it's a little bit different in that regard. You just don't need all the buttons anymore. Okay.
Okay. And then Dan, we'll let you get back to your presentation, but real quickly, there are a couple questions here. There seems to be some confusion about modem and Wi-Fi systems.
Yeah.
And why can't they use the existing one? Are there less expensive ones?
Okay. Not a problem. And this is definitely one of the more confusing things about home internet. And I know, and maybe I probably did a bad job explaining it because I've been working in the industry, you know, since the 90s and been involved, you know, with Roadrunner originally as long ago as 1999. So again, the Wi-Fi is your wireless, and the modem is what converts the signal coming from the system in the street, I'll call it, from the telephone pole into a network signal. So again, so think of it as there's two different technologies, but they work together and they both deliver internet to a device. The modem just converts the signal to a usable internet signal. The Wi-Fi, the router or mesh Wi-Fi system, that takes that Ethernet, internet communication and broadcasts it. That's what Wi-Fi is a radio. And again, you can buy combination units. If you have a really small house, there are very good combination modem Wi-Fi in one box. In other words, you plug the cable into it from the street and it also transmits that signal. And that's okay, because if you only have one point of need for a good Wi-Fi signal, you can get an all-in-one, and I've installed many of those. But again, it's still two different technologies, even if it's in the same box. You've got the modem, which it's modulate, demodulate. That's an old term, MODEM, modulate. That's where the word modem comes from. But that basically takes the signal from the cable company and it changes it into a usable network signal for your devices. And then the Wi-Fi technology, separate technology, takes that signal and turns it into radio waves so that your phone and your laptop and your iPad and any device can pick it up. I really hope that helps. And I know it's a very technical conversation. A lot of people don't even want to hear about it, but I'm hoping that it answered the question out there, Elaine.
Thank you, Tom. I think you did a great job. Thanks.
All right. I'm happy to just take questions right now. I mean, I think I've done everything except maybe talk about doing some speed tests. And I see there might be some other questions, Elaine.
There are a couple more questions. Okay, we'll make sure we have time for the speed test.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, I think that's important. Okay, so other question is there any real competition to Optimum and Reading for internet access?
Well, there is. I think most people know, or at least you've seen the Frontier trucks driving around. They've been doing that for a couple of years now. They've been installing fiber to the home. And by the way, Optimum is doing the same thing. They are installing fiber in most locations in Reading. What's the difference and what does it mean? Well, hopefully it's a reliable network. And what I mean by that is, I know that there are some areas of Reading where the traditional cable plant from Optimum was not really reliable. It would have outages or drops. And I mean, not in your Wi-Fi signal at home, although that would, see the same effect, but I mean, just the signal out in the street, a tree limb would fall every once in a while and knock out your internet connection. Now the same thing can happen to a fiber, cable just as easily could happen to a traditional cable. But there is competition. The question was, yeah, so the new Frontier technology is fiber technology. It's very good. It's much, much faster than their old Frontier telephone line internet, which was very, very slow service. It all comes down to the price, and they all offer great prices usually for the first year. And you have to be careful because after a year it might go up. And Frontier only offers their internet. So if you got Frontier, it's great. You have to then buy one of the streaming or subscribe to one of the streaming services we're talking about. And honestly, I really wish I knew what the current pricing offers were for Frontier, and I apologize for not having researched that ahead of time. But I assume that they're comparable to the Optimum pricing. And again, there's probably people out there who know even more than I do about this if you've been pricing that out. So, okay, hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Is there any real, sorry, if you cut the cord with Optimum, what happens with your Optimum email accounts?
That's a really good question too. As long as you hold on to the Optimum internet, you can keep your Optimum internet or email account if you really like it, because you're not gonna become a non-customer. You'll still be an internet customer. So if that's important to you, you should have no problem. You just have to make sure if you do call Optimum and say, hey, I'm getting rid of my TV, I just want to keep the internet, they'll tell you on the phone at the same time. They'll confirm that, yeah, you can keep your email address, because again, you're not going to drop their service. You're just dropping their TV service, which has nothing to do with the email address.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the last question, Dan, I don't know, I hope I'm not following it, but let's see if you can follow.
Okay.
And it's probably because of my lack of knowledge here. So I have a Wi-Fi and modem from Spectrum. Why do I need a second setup?
Okay. Good question. You don't need a second one. But what you can do, and again, this gets back to my recommendation, is with Spectrum, I'm pretty sure they are charging you a monthly fee for their hardware, their modem and Wi-Fi. Now, it might be wrapped up in a bundle, because, and again, Spectrum, which is Charter, which was who bought Time Warner Cable. In fact, for a few years, I worked for Charter Spectrum, and I was in charge of all of the bills that went out every month. My department was responsible for 25 million statements every month to go out the door. And I worked with the marketing people, and they came up with all kinds of bundles. And sometimes they would include the hardware charge, the monthly fee for your modem and Wi-Fi in the bundle. A lot of times, though, if you look at your statement, it's an add-on. So you'll see equipment, you'll see Wi-Fi or smart Wi-Fi or whatever the marketing term is for the Wi-Fi fee. So, but my recommendation is, if you can, and you want to get down to just the internet only, you buy your own modem and your own Wi-Fi setup. Could be 2 separate devices. And that gets rid of those monthly charges if you've got them. If you've got a modem fee, if you've got a Wi-Fi fee, those come off your bill and you don't have to pay it anymore. It's a one-time charge that you're going to have. Well, it's a one-time purchase at Best Buy or from Amazon.com. You can buy a modem, you can buy Wi-Fi, and it's one time only, you're done with it. So you don't have to have 2 devices. You give Spectrum back their device and say, here, I don't want it anymore. I've got my own. So that's how that, I hope that answers. I think that was the question. And I want to make sure that that was it, Elaine. So.
Okay.
Okay.
That person with the question does say, I only have Wi-Fi and modem, no subscription for channels.
Okay, so yeah, you just have the internet, I guess is what I'm hearing.
Yes, it sounds like it.
Even easier than if you've just got Spectrum for internet, it's the same recommendation I have, is you buy your own modem and your own Wi-Fi device. Again, it could be an all-in-one, or it could be a modem plus a Wi-Fi, like a mesh system, which is very good to have. And then again, you give Spectrum back their modem. It's still, but now you still be paying Spectrum whatever they charge monthly for your internet service. So now you're just buying their service, but you're not renting their hardware. You're not paying a monthly fee for the hardware and the Wi-Fi. You're only going to pay the monthly fee for the internet service itself at whatever speed that you want to have. I think that's the answer anyway.
Very good. Thank you. Just a comment here that someone was quoted $25 per month first year for Frontier.
That's a great price. Thank you for letting me know. Again, I doubt it's going to be $25 a month after the first year. It probably will be more like $100 a month. But Frontier is very, very aggressive. I know they're trying to get into this market. I know that they've changed hands and they went through some sort of, business distress recently. Frontier did, I mean, but they're still very aggressive with their fiber product. They're rolling it out and they want to get it in people's homes. So yeah, $25 a month is a very aggressive offer for a first year. So you know what you can do, by the way, but this is why it's great to have your own modem, because modems are pretty universal now. In other words, a modem that, now I'm going to take that back, because fiber is a little bit different. Forget I just said that. Fiber is its own animal. And you can't always buy your own fiber modem. I know you can with Verizon Fios, and because I've got some customers in New York where they have Fios, and you can actually buy your own Fios device. I'm not up to speed on Frontier. Frontier, it's a little bit of a different game. The law doesn't really apply as much. So I'm going to hesitate to say to buy your own device with Frontier. But having said that, if you get a great one-year contract and it's going to go up to $100, and you're going to get another great deal from Optimum for a year, you can bounce back and forth. Now, a lot of people don't like to do that because it's a lot of work. It depends on if you're more interested in saving money or if you're more interested in getting a good quality internet connection. So I kind of went off in some different directions there, so I apologize. But it depends on your priority. Is it saving money or getting a really reliable connection, even if you're going to pay more for it,
And the same person has said that they were told $35 after the first year, but the rest to be determined.
To be determined. Yeah, that's always the catch, right? Well, listen, here's what I'd say. If you're going to get good fiber internet at $25 a month and then $35 a month for the next 2 years, I might look at that too. I don't think they're in my neck of the woods here in Reading yet. But I would personally say, sure, if you're going to give me fiber, I've got my own Wi-Fi. Now they'll probably have to put their own, but I've got my own Wi-Fi system. I'll just plug that into their fiber modem. And that's why it's good to have your own Wi-Fi. And I would do that for sure. And that's just me speaking for myself. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just kind of, putting the disclaimer. I'm not telling you to do that, but it sounds like a great deal to me. That's what I would say about that. Okay.
That's good to know. Thank you. One provider, and they forgot who, said I could keep my Optimum email if I went with their internet service. Do you think that is true?
Yeah, I mean, you would, if you like your Optimum email, you could not switch over to, for example, Frontier. You'd lose your Optimum email address. But if you have an Optimum email address, you're sticking with their internet service, you'll be able to keep your Optimum email address
No,
because,
Sorry, I think what she's saying is that another provider had said that they could keep their Optimum email
I
if they
see.
went with their internet service. Would that be
Interesting.
true? Yeah.
That's I assume it'd be Frontier. I'm not sure who would do that. Um, I mean, it means that they'd have to have an agreement with Optimum to do that because Optimum owns their email addresses. So that may be something. I'm not really sure how that works. It could work. I mean, it's certainly something that could work. Um, it may be what they call an email alias or an email forward, meaning that um, you would say, okay, Optimum is going to agree to forward your email to their email service. I don't know. I honestly don't know how that's going to work. They can make it work. It's a business arrangement of some sort so that you could keep that email address if it's important to you. I mean, email is something that I think if everybody who started internet companies, 20 years ago, and I mean Roadrunner, had to do it again, they wouldn't even bother with email. It was more work than it's worth giving people email addresses because the email addresses are free. You can get Gmail, you can get Yahoo, you can get Hotmail. It was such a big pain in the neck to handle email. And maybe Optimum doesn't care. Say, fine, keep the Optimum email address because, whatever. So if that's true, then I learned something tonight. I didn't know that you could switch to another provider and keep your Optimum email address. That's a good thing to know. Okay.
Very good. Another participant would like to know why use 2.4 gigahertz versus 5 gigahertz band.
Okay, that's a good. So what they're talking about is your home Wi-Fi. It broadcasts the same internet on two different wavelengths. They just mentioned 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. And it's a good question because, well, okay, I'll try to make it simple. 2.4 gigahertz was the original bandwidth for all Wi-Fi. And 5 gigahertz came along. 5 gigahertz, it's faster. It's a faster speed. That's why it's a higher number. Now, but here's the challenge with it is two things. 2.4 gigahertz has a long range of coverage. In other words, if you have a 0.4 gigahertz, walk outside of your backyard and still pick it up, and your Wi-Fi works. 5 gigahertz, even though it's faster and it's stronger, has a much more limited range. So what happens is your phone or your device will automatically switch between the two. When you're inside the house, for example, or you're near the Wi-Fi router, it'll be on the 5 gigahertz and it'll be a faster experience, whatever you're using your device for. When you go out into the yard or you go further away in the house from wherever your Wi-Fi signal is, then it'll switch over automatically because it'll lose contact with the 5 gigahertz. That doesn't go that far, but you'll still have Wi-Fi. It just won't be quite as fast. And that's why mesh systems are great because it spreads the 5 gigahertz all around the house. Now, there's one other reason for the 2.4 gigahertz. There's a lot of smart devices like smart doorbells like Ring or cameras such as that, that only operate at 2.4 gigahertz. And that's why they have to have both of those bands in the same Wi-Fi unit. I know we just went off to another technical discussion there, but hopefully that kind of explains why there's two different, you don't get to pick and choose usually which one if you have a phone, for example, it automatically switches between the two as it needs to. But there are some devices that automatically have to have like the 2.4 gigahertz, for example. Okay.
Very good. Thank you. I have two questions about landlines. So I'll give them to you at the same time. What do I do if I want to keep my landline? And the other is, do I have to use an Optimum modem if getting landline phone service too?
Oh, and if you mean landline through Optimum's modem with the phone jack in it, so it's a phone modem, the answer is no. You can buy your own phone modem, and that's important to know. I'm assuming that they mean the Optimum phone landline.
It sounded like it, yes.
Okay, yeah,
I think.
you can replace that modem as well. And you can use a modem that's got the phone jack in it, and that way you don't have to worry about hanging on to the Optimum modem. It's the same for Comcast, which is Xfinity, it's the same for Spectrum. They all allow you to buy a combination modem with the phone jack in the back if you still use their phone service. Yeah. Okay.
Very good. Oh. And then the last question here is, what are your thoughts on Starlink Internet by Elon Musk? Would all of this become obsolete soon?
That's a really good question. It's a interesting service. It works. I haven't used it myself yet. And I think that there's a market for it. And I'm pretty sure it's available here now. I mean, it's available almost anywhere because it's satellites that are zooming past overhead. It's a little bit different than traditional satellite service because it's a very low altitude. And there's a lot of the Starlink satellites up there. I would say it's a good option. Again, I haven't tried it myself. I'm aware of it, and I know it's becoming a little more popular. So yeah, I would say if you have an opportunity to become a Starlink subscriber to get your internet, I'd say, depending on the offer, if it's a trial or they give you any sort of a deal, I'd say try it. If you're not happy with either what you're paying or you can get a better deal with Starlink, and you're not happy with the speed that you're getting, or you're having outages all the time with Optimum or whoever you're using, I would say give it a shot. I'm very happy with my Optimum. I paid my $95 a month, and it's very, very reliable where I happen to live in my neck of the woods here in Reading. So I don't really think about it too much. If it was bad, I'd be looking at Starlink. And the other one real quickly that I've been waiting for years for is the T-Mobile home internet service, which is basically mobile T-Mobile data, like a little tiny, you put it in your window or wherever in your house, it picks up a signal and you get it. But they're not available in Reading yet. So that's not even a conversation I'd like to have.
Very good.
That's
And
just me. Okay.
we're getting really close to 8 o'clock. So
Yeah.
we do have two last questions, and they're both about speed. And
Mm.
you had talked about wanting to go over speed. What speed do you consider necessary? And the other one is, we pay 100 megabytes per second data, but we only receive 40. What do we do?
Well, okay. So if I'm gonna, this is the Google speed test. You just go to Google, type in speed test, whether it's on your phone or whether it's here. Here's what I'd say. And you can see I'm getting about 200, but your 40 maybe because you've got a bad Wi-Fi signal in the house, a poor Wi-Fi, or you're far from it, or your actual signal coming into the modem from the street is not good. In other words, the only way you can test that is plugging a computer directly into your cable modem with a wire and testing it that way, because Wi-Fi is not going to be a good test. But let's just say this, it's a complicated question. I can't answer it in 30 seconds or less because that's a whole other conversation. And that you have to be in person to do the test. I mean, I do that sort of testing a lot. I used to do that for free. I don't have as much time on my hands as to do free internet tests in your home and figure out why it's slow. Because sometimes it's the fault of the cable company. They have a bad signal coming into your house and they do have to fix that. Sometimes it's just a Wi-Fi problem, and that's not their problem. It may be your problem. Sorry, that's not a great answer, but
That's good. And how can everyone reach you? We have somebody requesting. Would you want to type your?
Sure. I'll type it in. I'm just going to type my website in there.
Yes, and if you click it to everyone.
Oh, I see. I was the one who made this mistake before. So starsridge.com, and you can send me a message. I'll keep an eye out now for questions. I'm happy to spend a few minutes talking to somebody on the phone about an issue or a question.